Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We are on ayah number 151 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, كَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا فِيكُمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْكُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِنَا وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمْ مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. Okay, so he begins this ayah by saying kama, which means just as. So he's saying, just as we sent to you a messenger amongst you. But what is this messenger being compared to when he says just as? Well, we need to look at the last ayah. You'll remember that ayah 150 was talking about turning the faces of the mu'mineen towards the Kaaba in their salah. And that this is from Allah Jalla wa Ala completing His favor upon the mu'mineen. You'll remember he said, وَلِأُتِمَّ نِعْمَتِي عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ, so that I may complete my favors upon you and so that you may be guided. So continuing on, he says kama, meaning similarly, as in similarly, for me to complete my favors upon you, I sent to you a messenger amongst you. Rasulan, a messenger. What does this refer to? It refers to the last prophet. Minkum, from you, as in from the Arab. Reciting ayatina, our ayat, meaning the ayat of the Quran. وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ, and purifying you, that is to say, purifying you from shirk and also bad character, which shirk of course is part of. And teaching you al-kitab, the book, meaning the Quran. And al-hikmah, we talked about al-hikmah, meaning wisdom. One might argue that al-kitab means the Quran, and al-hikmah also means the Quran, because after all, the Quran is al-hikmah. But if we say that they mean something different, which is the asl, that two things do mean something different, then we would say al-hikmah means living your life and behaving in a manner which is in accordance with what Allah Jalla wa Ala approves of. Because amongst the Jahiliyyah, there were many foolish practices, such as burying your daughters alive and other such irrational, unwise practices, which of course are not from hikmah. So al-Islam teaches you to live in accordance with al-hikmah. So essentially, al-hikmah is to implement the ahkam of the sharia in your life. And this is taken from the Quran, but also the Sunnah as well. وَيُعَلِّمُكُمْ مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. That's clear enough. And He would teach you what you did not know. So this is more general than teaching you the Quran and the hikmah. He's teaching you many other things that you did not know. So this would include things like prophecies about matters that will take place in the future. It could be about matters of this deen or this dunya. It's general. So reflecting on this ayah, we may take that Allah sending a messenger amongst us is from the ni'mah of Allah. Imagine if there was no messenger. How would you be living your life? You would be just like anyone else in your society, from the kuffar, essentially just a slave to popular beliefs and popular culture. You would be taking your lifestyle from them, your rights and wrongs from them, and you would be a self-worshipper just like everyone else in society. It would be a meaningless, purposeless, and pointless existence. We also notice that he says that he sent the messenger amongst you, meaning among the Arab. And this is important because the Arab, especially the Quraysh, knew the Prophet personally, and they would know what type of a person he is. And we all know that he had a reputation of being a trustworthy man amongst them. So how are you then saying that all of a sudden he is lying about Allah Jalla wa Ala? And this is one of the arguments that Hiraqal used to show that the Prophet is real. He asked, have you known him to lie? And Abu Sufyan said, no, we have never known him to lie. So Hiraqal says, how is it that a person who never lies against other people is now all of a sudden lying against Allah? That does not add up. We find from this ayah the prime directive of the Prophet is to recite the ayat of Allah and to teach people. The Prophet was a teacher. He taught people the right and the wrong, the guidance from the misguidance. We learn from the prime directives of the Prophet is at-tazkiyah, to purify people. That is, to purify their beliefs and their actions. So this deen of Islam is here to perfect the good character. And from good character is to worship your Creator. So we have a broad definition of good character. It's not like a popular definition of good character when you're nice to other people. Yes, that's included, but we have a broader definition. It includes the rights of Allah Jalla wa Ala as well. So not believing in Allah or not worshipping Him is from bad character. We may also take that the Prophet has explained the Quran to us. So there is nothing hidden in the Quran. Now there are some people who claim that there are certain ayat or meaning in the Quran which are hidden and mysterious. There are some people who say that there are certain words which we do not know the meaning of, such as, for example, certain sifat of Allah Jalla wa Ala. They would say, we do not know the meaning of it, we just leave it to Allah. This is called tafweed. And all of this is nonsense. The Prophet has made clear to us the meaning and the words of the ayat of the Quran. If we do not know them, then it is upon us to study, like what we are doing right now. We may take from this ayah that if the Prophet is teaching us what we did not know, then the asl, the default position is that we are ignorant of what guidance is. So this means we are heavily reliant on the guidance from the Quran. Let's look at ayah 152. فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. He says, فَاذْكُرُونِي. Notice the fa. This is the fa as-sabab, meaning because I have given you all this ni'mah by turning your face to the Kaaba and sending the messenger to you, all for your guidance and righteousness. So remember me. That is, give thanks to me. أذكركم, I will remember you. When he says أذكركم, the verb is majzoom bis-sukun, and the reason it is majzoom is because it is the answer to an amr, an order. So a jawab al-amr is majzoom, and this is just an Arabic grammatical point. Washkuru li, from shakara yashkuru, to thank or to give gratitude, and this is done by the tongue, by the heart, and by the limbs, and it is done as a response to a favor done to you. So it is to show how much you appreciate and value the favor that has been done to you by doing that which would please your benefactor. So your tongue remembers Allah, your heart affirms Allah Jalla wa Ala and values the favors done to you, and your actions are obedient to Allah Jalla wa Ala. This is how you give thanks. Giving thanks is different to different benefactors. So if a neighbor does something good to you, then giving thanks to your neighbor is different to giving thanks to Allah Jalla wa Ala. It all depends on the benefactor. Giving thanks to Allah Jalla wa Ala can only be done in ways in which Allah prescribes. So you have to use the correct currency. Now notice an interesting difference. When Allah Jalla wa Ala started to speak about the Banu Israel, you'll remember He said, Ya Bani Israel, اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم. Remember my ni'mah which I bestowed upon you. And yet in this ayah, when He addresses the ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, He says, فَاذْكُرُونِي, remember me. He does not say remember my ni'mah. The reason is, for Banu Israel, He wants them to remember the ni'mah, and so thereby they may remember Allah Jalla wa Ala. And here He says remember me, so remember Allah, so thereby the ummah may remember the ni'mah of Allah Jalla wa Ala. It's the other way around. Now one may question at this stage and say that for us to remember Allah is easy enough to know what that means. But how does Allah remember us? Meaning to say, what does that even mean? Does Allah forget us that He needs to remember us? Because oftentimes we can forget Allah. When we commit sins, at that point we are forgetting Allah Jalla wa'ala. And so to answer this, we say that for us, remembering Allah Jalla wa'ala would be remembering Allah with our tongues as we make adhkar. It would also be performing any and all righteous actions, such as the salah, such as the zakah, the hajj, the fasting. All of this is dhikr of Allah. But of course, all of this does not apply to Allah. So when Allah remembers us, what that means to say is that He helps us and grants us tawfiq and protection and success in what we are trying to achieve, be it in the dunya or deen. And we have a similar hadith to this effect. تعرف إلى الله في الرخاء يعرفك في الشدة. Know Allah during times of ease and opulence, and Allah will know you during times of distress. You see, for us to know Allah is different. It is basically obeying Him. This is how you know Allah. Believe and obey. But this knowing does not apply to Allah. Allah does not need to obey us. So when Allah knows us during times of distress, what this means is that He cares for us, shows concern, help and guidance when we most need it, and does not leave us in the lurch. So the point is, we understand all these words through the proper context. Okay, well, one might still ask a question, then why does Allah use that particular word? Meaning the word to know, or the word to remember. If the knowing of Allah or the remembering of Allah is not the same as our knowing and remembering, why would He use the same word? And the answer is, He uses the same word to create linguistic symmetry, as we found in the last hadith we mentioned and in this ayah. It happens elsewhere in the Quran as well. وَإِنْ عَاقَبْتُمْ فَعَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ. If you are punished, then punish them with the similar punishment. He uses the word aqaba, which means to punish, but the point is, you were not punished. You were assaulted, and then you punish your assailant. So you were not punished, and yet the word punished is used only to create linguistic symmetry, because symmetry sounds better and more poetic. وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ from kufr. Here it means do not deny me, or disbelieve in me, or belie me. Otherwise, normally kufr means ingratitude. It's opposite of shukr. So reflecting on this ayah, we take the immediate benefit that remembering Allah Jalla wa'ala is an obligation because an order is issued. The minimum remembrance of Allah has to be the 5 times salah. We find that whoever remembers Allah, Allah remembers him. So what is that all about? Well, Allah Jalla wa'ala makes mention of such a person amongst the malaika. And this happens when you make mention of Allah amongst your peers. So you guard the remembrance of Allah in your heart, and Allah Jalla wa'ala likewise will guard you. So His reward is of the same type as your actions. We also take the obligation of being thankful to Allah Jalla wa'ala. And of course, dhikr of Allah is from giving thanks. Making mention the ni'mah of Allah upon you is also from giving thanks. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. Speak about the ni'mah of Allah upon you, but you speak about it not to boast, but rather by way of giving thanks. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, that I am the leader of the children of Adam on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and I am not boasting. So the Prophet is making mention of this ni'mah, not by way of boasting, but by way of giving thanks. And matters like dhikr of Allah and shukr to Allah are acts of ibadah, so you must have ikhlas. Otherwise it becomes shirk. Ayah 153. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. This is an address to the people who amanu. We spoke about this word iman before. So when he addresses a people by saying, O you who believe, it means the order which is coming up is going to be obeyed by those people who have iman and will not be obeyed by those who do not have iman. Okay, so what is the order coming up? It's as he says, Ista'inu, seek help, bis-sabr, with patience, and as-salah, with the salah, that's the prayer. Indeed, Allah is with those who are sabirin, the patient. So the word as-sabr means habs, to hold yourself back. And it means to hold yourself back from doing that which displeases Allah Jalla wa Ala. Normally, sabr is of three categories: being patient in performing righteous actions, being patient in refraining from evil actions, and thirdly, being patient on the bitter qadr of Allah, that is, when calamity strikes. In this ayah, it is referring to being patient during the calamities of life. So when calamity strikes or when you're worried, your solution is sabr and salah. And we find that Allah is with the sabirin, that is to say, He grants help to the patient ones. Otherwise, Allah is with everybody, even the kuffar, in that He surrounds them in His knowledge. He knows everything about them. He's not physically with them, but He is with them in terms of knowing everything about them and seeing them and so on. But He is with the sabirin in a different sense, in the sense that He will help them. So picking up on this ayah, we take that Iman is the best description for any human being, as Allah calls out by saying, O you who believe. So Iman is the best description that we can ever have, and therefore we want to perfect this description of Iman. We take the obligation of two things, patience and salah. And when the Prophet was stressed out, he would perform the salah. We take that sabr and salah are from the effects of Iman, and we take their fadilah in that they are extremely effective at soothing you when calamity befalls you. And it should be noted that the Prophet in particular needed sabr more so than other people because he was a messenger, and anyone who carries the message of Allah requires sabr because he will be met with opposition. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, Inna nahnu nazzalna alayka al-Qur'ana tanzila fasbir li hukmi rabbika wa la tuti' minhum athiman aw kafura. We have indeed sent down the Qur'an to you, so be patient and do not obey any sinner or disbeliever. هذا والله أعلم.